Welcome to the Walled Garden Podcast. Here we nourish the gardens of our minds, one meaningful conversation at a time. If you'd like to find out more, go to thewalledgarden.com. Thanks for joining us. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Walled Garden Podcast. So before I dive in and introduce my guest for today, I wanted to let you know that upcoming this week, on this Thursday for many of us, but Wednesday for most, we're actually having a conversation and live interview and Q&A with Mark Devine. Now, many of you will have heard Mark's podcast, but you may also know that he's an ex-Navy SEAL, he's a self-proclaimed yogi, he's an investor. He really pulls so much life experience into what he teaches people and what he shares in his messages, and just a very interesting person, very rich life experience. And so I highly recommend coming along to this event this week. You can go to thewalledgarden.com/events, and there you'll find the event and you can register for that. Now, to introduce today's guest, this is a bit of an out of the ordinary sort of episode. The person I have on today is a very close friend of mine. His name is Lachlan Hawkins. Now, Lockie, as I call him, and I, we met when we were back in university. We went through the Queensland Conservatorium of Music together. Lockie is a drummer. He's a handpan player as well. Absolutely stunning instrument, and he plays it incredibly well. He's a facilitator. You know, he's a therapist in many ways, though he wouldn't have that technical title. He's a connector. You know, he's absolutely, like me, an armchair philosopher, you might say. But more than that, he's just an incredible human being, somebody who I truly admire, somebody who I look up to, somebody who is such a great example of the examined life, somebody who's trying to live life to the fullest and to give back in the ways that they can serve best, you might say. So with that said, I'm really honored to have had this conversation with Lockie today for the podcast. And I know that you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. So I now present to you my conversation with Lachlan Hawkins. I believe that we were pretty much friends from first year, right? Studying music together. Is that right?
Correct. We played in first year ensemble together, mentored by the late John Stiefel.
The late John Stiefel?
He passed away, yes, he did.
Oh, that's
some pretty tragic circumstances, actually.
Man, that's really sad. He was an amazing person. Amazing.
Yeah, wasn't he?
He was such a beautiful musician.
We got along great. He was quite misunderstood, I think, and in the music circles, people had their opinions about him, of course. But you remember his some of his poetry he used to write. Do you remember that?
I remember that he had the humor of a sick comedian. Just he was but man, he was funny, you know, and very adventurous in his humor, and I like that.
Yes, that's where we met first year, and went through university together. And I guess over the years we built a bit of a love of personal development and some of the messages of Jim Rohn and Les Brown and Eric Thomas, and we went to see Eric Thomas together, didn't we?
Man, let me tell you a story then, okay? Because now you're reminding me, okay? And I actually told this story on a podcast I was interviewed on recently, because you are completely responsible for one of the most transformative moments in my life, and that was on my 20th birthday. I come down to university, and you're like, hey man, Eric Thomas is speaking over in
Ah, yes.
in town, and I had no idea who he was. I didn't know what to expect at all. And you said, come along. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, let's go, let's do it. And before that, I really wasn't, I was such a noob. I don't know if I ever told you, but before that day, like I had read maybe 2 books all the way through in my life. I had studied and I'd been a good student, of course, but it just no regard for the power of reading widely.
The power of the mind.
And you know what Eric Thomas said? He said, information changes situations. And that's one of the
He
things
did
that
say
stuck
that.
with me. And after that day, the next year, I ended up going to, read like 80 books and, got the gig on the cruise ships and everything. And you were responsible for that because you took me over to see Eric Thomas. So, yeah, that I tell that to everyone. That's one of the most important moments in my life, just where it's like the me before that day and then the me after that day. And so,
Yep.
yeah, man.
My pleasure. I feel like I am somewhat of a connector.
Oh, yeah.
I connect people to sometimes to opportunities, sometimes to other people. And that was a powerful day with Eric Thomas. That was great.
Yeah.
With the it was a bit of a what I call a pattern interrupt, which I think is a term in psychology, where similar to the work I was doing in the hospitals with the handpan, people would come into the hospital with a certain state of mind. They'd be, quite fearful or sad or scattered, and we'd provide some music in the hospital, and it would be a bit of a pattern interrupt that changed their thought pattern and their state of mind, and their sense of gratitude and all that sort of thing. So sounds like it did a similar thing for you, the Eric Thomas event.
That's interesting. I think that's
interrupted your story.
Yeah, I mean, like I just did to you, but it's that's a really important idea that you put in there. No, seriously, because sometimes I think as I've moved through, like I went from personal development, now I'm much more in the philosophical space, which
Yes,
many might argue that is basically a deeper form of personal development, or is the root of much of the personal development that we see today. One of the things that I started to see when I was reading the Stoics, for example, is just how many of their ideas are kind of deeper and I guess more sophisticated explanations of ideas that you might see in a lot of personal development literature. But I find that I get into the habit of, you move through certain stages in life and you can kind of look back and get strangely cynical about those past stages. And so I kind of think now just personal development, or, like those motivation speakers, you can get a little bit cynical about that. But one thing about Eric Thomas was it was certainly a pattern interrupt. It's like sometimes we need to go somewhere where somebody's going to be shouting at you for 45 minutes nonstop saying, wake the hell up. What are you doing? Like wake up, live better, act better, try to go for something in your life that is bigger than you. And so it's, yeah, man, there's a place for everybody. Hey, there's a place for those kinds of speakers. And Eric Thomas, he's one of the best. Hey,
I agree. He's a very powerful speaker, especially given his background. But I think we find the information, or it hits us at the time that we need it. I'm not so much drawn to some of the personal development speakers lately. A big period there I was following Brendan Burchard religiously, and Robin Sharma, and some of those coaches that talk about personal responsibility and or business and leadership, all those sort of themes. But now when I listen to them, I just have a different perspective. I'm not. I don't know how you would describe it, but hits me in a different way.
Yeah. What do you reckon changed?
Well, I got the information that I needed at the time, and I hopefully processed that into my psyche.
Yeah.
And started to live out some of those lessons. So maybe the similar themes they talk about now, they just don't hit me as deeply because I've hopefully integrated some of those things already.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one way to think of it. That's an optimistic view.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, can I ask you then, like, do you think can you bring to your memory any moments in your life where you had one of those kind of pattern interrupt moments where you just needed to be hit with a certain piece of information at that point?
Oh, pattern interrupt. I'm sure there's been plenty. There's been toxic, bad bad patterns instilled as well. Yeah, I mean, a few things come up. There was words that a music teacher said to me once that wasn't positive. That was not so much a pattern interrupt. That was that got me into a pattern that took a while to reverse. And then, yeah, there's been key times when certain advice has landed when I need it. I know one of my mentors, David Jones, who I think you may know about, percussionist, and he's in Victoria. He lectures at the Melbourne Conservatorium, the VCA. I spent some time. He would fly up to Brisbane. I'd spend some time with him, and I remember one lesson I was complaining, just about not feeling good enough and not complaining that I wasn't listening to enough musicians and not knowing the past and the tradition. And you would know that's a big theme in the jazz, learning jazz repertoire and improvised music. I was feeling a lot of guilt over that. And he said to me, man, the person you should listen to the most is yourself. And that was very powerful. And another thing he said to me at a different time was, be comfortable with the long-term reality.
Man, you can go many ways with that, right?
You could interpret that in so many ways.
How do you think you interpreted it?
Some could say that was, could say that could mean procrastinating, but be comfortable with the long-term reality. More or less, you're on the right path, but you need to have more patience, and you need to stick to your mission, longer to see the results over time. Don't be discouraged. That's the message I took away from it.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
there are a couple of things that come to mind.
I've always felt like you have a really firm grounding in that way of seeing things, and I think as a result, I don't think I'm going too far when I say that you were certainly the best percussionist in at least our grade at the conservatorium, and seriously just a brilliant musician. I was always just really glad to be around somebody like you who took the art form so damn seriously, and I know that it meant everything to you to get things right and to be on the right path. And I, on the other hand, such a lazy student when it comes to music. I tell people now that I've been learning the piano, kind of self-teaching the piano over the past year and a half or so. And there came a point there about 8 months, I would say, into my dedication to piano, where I started to see, man, I've played piano more in these past 8 months or this year, whatever, than I have practiced trumpet or singing in my entire life. And I have a degree in those. Yeah, and that to me was just a revelation of like, you've got to do the instrument that clearly, undoubtedly calls out to you and pulls you in,
Yes, you do need to do that. And as for me, well, some could say I had a toxic level of perfectionism that was instilled from some teacher authorities in the past.
Would you share, like, I know you mentioned, okay, we're going to go there, okay, because you mentioned there were some things that teachers said that steered you on the wrong path.
This is a podcast of philosophy and thought, and yes, we're going to go there, basically. if you would like to. Yes. What does Les Brown say? Sticks and stones can break your bones, but words will never hurt you. Except he says that's not true, is it? He said words can be very hurtful, which they were to me, and yeah, led me the wrong path. I mean, I don't have to go into the details, but basically, what was said to me at a very impressionable age. I think I was 12. And I was performing in the top big band at the school. And I was, of course, the smallest and the youngest there. I was just filling in. A few drummers were away, so I was actually helping at the time, and but full of fear, blah blah blah. But in some of those circumstances, yeah, I was told that I was pathetic, basically, and that I shouldn't be playing music and things of that nature. But which I later realised was said not to discourage me, but some form of tough love, I guess you would call it, where it was hoped that it would inspire me to work harder, which I think it did. I think it did achieve that. So you could argue that yes, it worked, but it caught up with me. It caught up with me later, basically, where I had to slow down and forgive myself because the perfectionism was it actually caused a big shift where I just realised that I was out of balance in my whole life, and I'm still working through that. And I'd placed too much importance on getting better and music in general at the expense of many other things, in my life, or all other areas, you name it.
Was there a point there where you kind of felt you started to realize that? Because I know that a lot of people, and I probably see a little bit of that in myself in terms of that just dogged approach of go, 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 always working, pushing. And you can get to the point where you start to ask, is this a wise approach? Am I taking in everything that I could be taking in life? Am I experiencing the richness that is available to me here and now, as opposed to seeking that next thing? But was there a point for you where you started to realize that?
Yeah, I had all those thoughts. Sort of culminated when a very serious, intimate relationship broke down from high school sweetheart story. And when that started to break down, and things would be said like, "Oh, you're only happy once you've practiced." Like you're grumpy unless you play your drums. Go play some drums. I don't want to deal with you. You're grumpy. That was the first sign that I had a bit of lack of balance going on. But then that would just, that's what led to the personal development path. I think that's what ultimately led to the handpan, which is the instrument that I specialize in now. Because, the handpan had a lot less structure and history, and it was a new ground, and it was a lot more forgiving compared to learning just about any other musical instrument with a rich history and rules and comparison syndrome and all that sort of thing.
So you were kind of attracted to the broad selection of avenues that you could go down with this instrument without being limited to that specific historical path that has been handed down.
Yes. Yep, I was very drawn to that, and it goes against a lot of other drummers who actually spend their whole life understanding the lineage of their instrument and the history and where the art form came from. So some could say I'm doing the complete opposite. But ultimately I'm just exploring what seems interesting to me and pursuing where the spark is, which I think is a good thing to do. obviously every day we don't feel like practicing every day, do we? Of course, which touches on discipline and all those sort of topics. But yeah, the spark's got to be there for me. I've found, whether that's songwriting or teaching or playing sports, you name it.
Yeah.
The inspiration's got to be there somewhat at some level to really motivate me to keep going. So,
well, I think it's kind of a wise approach. I mean, I certainly came to a point in my life where I started to realize when I'm doing stuff that I know I don't really want to do, even if it has a really good outcome, even if it's something that is clearly going to produce great results for other people or for myself, I will always do way better at something that I'm clearly loving doing than I will at the thing that I have to push myself through. And that's kind of what I learned on the piano as well. And I want to share this with you and see what you think of this, because one of the things that I always thought about, there were kind of two moments for me that are sticking out now. Firstly, it's when I was a younger kid, I really loved playing on the piano, and I would noodle around and I'd kind of play by ear. I already knew that I had a gift for playing things by ear. I wasn't brilliant, but my parents could see it. And it's like, hey, he listens to a song and then he can play the melody at this young age. And you think, okay, cool, there's something there. Funnily enough, Simon, the name means he has heard, right? So there's some synchronicity for you. But nonetheless, they put me into lessons on piano, but it was with a classical teacher, clearly. And it was like, play these notes at this time and, go back and learn this music. And after a few lessons, I just gave up. I was like, I can't do this. I hate this. I don't want to do it. Hate piano, And so I left it. But then when I came back to playing the piano, I came back to it because I started to see, man, I'm calling myself like a jazz trumpeter and singer. That's way too limiting, because that's not what I am. Like, I'm a creative artist, and that means that I can do poetry, or I can do piano, or I can do I can explore. That's what I'm supposed to do. And when I started learning the piano, I had the choice of, okay, do I want to do my scales and do a very technical approach to this, or do I want to just develop a love of this instrument and just look at it as it's a fresh, clean slate and say, let's see what I start to create. And I took the latter approach because I remember one of the things that somebody said to me in my first year, and this goes back to what you're saying about, when you're very impressionable, you can kind of hear things and get on the wrong path. Somebody who, a bass player, I was talking to them and just about my ear playing and how, as a jazz musician, I was very much intuitive in my playing, and I'm not technically advanced at all. Now, I recognize the value of getting technically advanced, but what he said to me is like, that's something like that's going to be a real weakness for you if that's your only thing. And I get that. I 100%, I get that that's going to be a weakness for me if that's my only thing, is being an intuitive player. But when I sat at the piano, I was like, screw that. I'm going to play, and I'm going to love playing this instrument, and I'm going to spend as much time as I want to on this instrument. And what that ended up doing is, like, I could sit down for like 6 or 7 hours and I wouldn't feel tired. And I was just playing and playing and playing and growing and expanding. And, I look at how far I've progressed as an artist. Like, you couldn't put me on a bandstand and say, play this with this band, because it's not going to work, right? But as an artist, getting what I want out of the instrument, it's like the progression you see over a year, if you just try to develop a love of the instrument and pour it into it. I don't know. And it seems like that's what you're doing with the handpan too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to have a love to play without any expectations, really. And I try to teach in that way as well, somewhat, which is very, it's not how everyone thinks about it, really, because we have all these rules and guidelines and things. But yeah, for you to sit down for 6 to 7 hours and just play without getting tired, that clearly shows you're inspired and in spirit.
Is that where it
inspired
comes from?
in spirit. I think so. Don't quote me.
Okay.
That's what I'm going with. Wayne Dyer talks about that.
Yeah.
In spirit, with the source, the creative source,
Yeah.
wherever that divine spark comes from. And I try and do that with the handpan and compose to themes, or be inspired by imagery, and just try and write music to that coincides with that. Or I'll just play and create, as you say. Which should be what we're allowed to do, rather than always following instructions.
Well, let's go into this then, because I want to know. I know multiple teachers at the conservatorium now who really feel as though, like, I can't remember the I can't remember the term that somebody came up with. It was a great term, but many teachers there believe that its curriculum is very limiting to allowing artists to like really flourish creatively. And it seems like that's one of the ultimate challenges of education, is how do we, there's always, it says in the Psalms in the Bible, sing a new song. There's always this new song in creation that's constantly being sung at all times. Heraclitus, he talked about how we're standing in a river, and that river is always changing, because it's not the same water now as it was 5 minutes ago. So everything is always changing at all times, and so are we. And of course, there needs to be a balance of keeping the tradition alive, right? But yes. I wonder what it seems like you would have a different opinion about how we should be educating people in music, and how we should be enabling, I guess, the artist to flourish, or to bubble up out of the young student, I guess.
It's a big question.
Yes.
It's probably a question the universities ask themselves as well, I would have to think.
Yeah.
A question that's been asked a lot is, what is Australian music, for example? At the conservatorium, we learn traditions that are not inherently from Australia. If you're in the jazz department, you're learning music, American music, and with its traditions that go further back than that, or the European classical music, etc. So, what makes the original? What makes the music original, or makes it our own? Which is, it's a big question. I don't have a clear answer on that, but I think, the idea that we need to teach with so many rules and limits is the one to consider. I mean, I work with students one-on-one, and a lot of them go through, examination systems and things like that, which is usually the parents' request, or the music school's request. And there is merit to doing, to learning those skills, but there can be other consequences that are not so positive in doing that. It's about how we can try and incorporate more of the creative music making into assessment and into university systems. It's a big question. It would take a lot of brainstorming.
It's so hard to. It seems like to me one of the major issues is just how difficult it is to even grade creativity. Because by definition,
that's one of the
creativity
main
is going to be outside of anything that you might originally, like, if it's creative, it's going to be nothing like you're expecting. So,
that's one of the main issues. So, of course, there's a lot of music competitions and grants and fellowships and things like that, which individuals apply for. And you have panels of subjective opinion. They have to award these things to somebody. So, music shouldn't be treated like sport, that's for sure. And I think that's obvious, but sometimes it is. I do agree that university should develop competence, musical competence. Students need to understand what they're playing and where it comes from, and vocabulary, and how they can put their own musical sentences together and create their own musical identity. That's all things that I'm sure they consider a lot. But yeah, assessment and how things should be graded. I know a colleague of mine in the honours research class, he looked at this. He looked at how one of the instruments was assessed in a university environment, after having a difficult time himself with what he figured to be unfair assessment. So he was met with a lot of resistance from the university to even explore that subject. So it's a very complex one. How should music be assessed and graded? But it comes from early childhood too, and the schooling years. I think before it even gets to the university years, it needs to be looked at earlier. And what younger children, how they're being graded per se, how their skills are being, when they meet certain checkpoints, how are they being encouraged to improve, essentially.
Yeah. I feel like I was.
I
Sorry, go on.
was going to say, we don't sit on any boards at the university, so it's not our decision to make, is it?
Well, you definitely don't want me on a board at a university anyway, not at this stage. I've got some learning to do. But I have to say, that's one thing that I was very grateful for about my own earlier music education in high school, because when I went to grammar, the first thing that my dad did was he took me up to the music department, took me to the heads of music and said, hey, he's got a good ear for music and he plays trumpet and he wants to do some stuff. What can you do? And that was the best thing, because he introduced me to two people. Actually, it was Charlie Sims, who really was my early influence there. He was a saxophonist and played jazz and ran the big bands, ran all the bands. But the thing about our school that was different from others was other schools on the Sunshine Coast, they might learn like 3 songs in their big band for that entire year and just get it perfect 100%, because they wanted to win the competitions. So, and they always did, those were the schools that always won the competitions every time, because their band was like right there, exactly how it should be played. But Charlie's approach was different. He wanted us to learn an entire gig's worth of music so that we could go out and do gigs and so that we could have a great time. And he was always about, let's have fun. That's what this is about. We're playing music. Let's wake up,
It's about fun, is it?
So he just instilled within us, this passion for playing a lot, and so it was always fun going to big band, and we loved it. We loved getting there at 7 a.m. and, as young students, and just getting in there and having the best time in that band. So it sounds like you had a different experience.
Very different. There was a sense of dread just overwhelmed the room pretty well every week, wondering who's practiced this week, who's played their parts. And we were a very high level band. We were playing Buddy Rich material, Bill Holman, Gordon Goodwin charts at, year 9, year 10.
Yeah.
So very high expectation, and we played great. We played very well. Lots of the alumni are, perform now in the Queensland Symphony Orchestra, and some have studied overseas, and So I do agree. It's set a really high level of musicianship, which I think is important. But the question is, could that have been achieved in another way? Which not sure.
Yeah, it's hard to know. Hey.
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the way it needed to be, but it was also, the challenge of it was also fun in a sense, but wasn't fun by design.
Yeah. It sounds to me like the experience that you had in your high school was the experience that I was having.
There's a movie called Whiplash.
Yeah.
There's a movie called Whiplash, which is nearly written about my life.
Yeah. Okay. Did somebody ever throw a chair at you, or?
No, but I was in a car accident on the way to a school concert, which also happens in the movie.
Oh my gosh.
And I nearly missed a plane as well because of the car accident. I was in
Because
another
you're
city.
like your parents were like rushing to get there or something like that, or
Yeah, I was in another city for a drum competition, and the taxi driver pulled out of the hotel and tried to cross 4 lanes of a highway, and we got hit by another car.
ooh.
And I sustained whiplash. I had a whiplash injury. I had neck injury because the car hit me on my side, and then
Wow.
we had to rush to get to the airport because I had a school concert that afternoon. Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
no ice buckets and no chairs were thrown.
Yeah. Okay.
Verbal
that's good
chairs were thrown.
I was constantly surprised that John Hoffman didn't want to throw a chair at me in big band in university because I was, man, you know, I have to tell you this. I had such a killer audition for the conservatorium. Paul Cusick, you know, he was my accompanist, and I go down there and, you know, I did 2 songs. I was supposed to do 3 songs, right? But by halfway through the second song, John Hoffman was like, "He's great. We want him in." You know, but one of the things that he said, "Listen, I like you, but where did you get your accompanist?" You know, like like he wanted to know about Paul, right? But so I had to play like half of the first song, half of the second song, and he was like, "Yeah, I want you here," right? But what he didn't do was test my technical knowledge of sight reading and that sort of stuff. And in that way, I was completely insufficient, right? And I was a bad student in terms of like, I didn't want to spend the time doing that stuff. And so I recognized that there was a real lack of discipline in some areas of my life as a student. But man, I got to say, he put up with my terrible playing, big band playing in university, and I'll always be grateful for him for, you know, getting me into the conservatorium. And also, I guess I wish that I had have put in more effort to be a better student in those respects, because I feel like perhaps I had a lot more of the exploration than maybe you did. You were very technically proficient, but I wish I had a little bit more of your love of the craft and dedication to the craft, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for all the mentors. I wouldn't, wouldn't have reached, the heights I did at a young age, I guess, and the achievements and the performance opportunities. It wouldn't have happened without any of the mentors.
Yeah.
Even if their words were negative at times, I don't regret or hold any spite. They may listen to this one day, so. But it's true. I don't. I actually worked with the teacher I mentioned earlier. I worked with him for 6 years together in a school setting, and he was my boss, and we worked very well together and had what actually turned into a great friendship. So I'm sure there's lessons to take away from both parties. So
yeah. Oh, who was it? Somebody, one of the ancient philosophers, he said, with a student, you always need to be doing one of 2 things. It's like you need the stick or the carrot, like a little bit of, hey, get to it, you can be better than this. And I think that that's a necessary element of it. Like, what are you doing? You could be way better, and there's potential within you that you're not getting to right now, but also a little bit of a carrot and sweetness. And this is also what Epictetus says. He says, when it comes to personal growth, we need 2 things: self-scrutiny and kindness. And that's just, it's hard to know how to get that balance. But I want to ask you about your time in hospitals, because one of the really cool things for everybody listening that I saw you start to do was take your handpan into hospitals and be playing for. Was it in the cancer wards? Was it in those places, or just tell me when that started and why, and what was the effect?
Sure. Well, the project's called the Stairwell Project because it started within the stairwell of a major hospital in Brisbane, which goes up about 9 floors. So 20 flights of stairs, something like that. It's a huge stairwell. And Peter Breen, who's just inspirational person, he runs the Jugglers Art Space, which is an organisation that helps support visual art and what would you say, artists being recognised in this landscape. And he's been for a long time. He's done amazing work. But he's a former radiographer and used to work in the hospital setting. And he used to go up the stairwell. When the lifts were busy, he would use that stairwell all the time. And he just had the thought, wouldn't it be great if we had music in this space to uplift people? And basically, he linked up with some conservatorium graduates and students and started this program. 2015 it started. And about 10 to 15 musicians came in regularly and played in the stairwell. And basically, it was a trial to see which instruments suited well. And basically, the handpan became the core instrument of the program, essentially, along with the harp and classical guitar, the main instruments. And basically, the hospital began to see what we were doing, and they were really resonating with the positive impact with the staff and the patients, and they extended the program with some funding to go to the cancer care services. So we played in the cancer wards, oncology wards, waiting areas, all throughout the hospital, basically. And we played in some of the public spaces. The effect was incredible. And there's actually been research that's now been published on our work through a student researcher who came in doing a Masters of Social Work, I think it was, and she wrote a dissertation on what we were doing, and just very healing, beneficial to everybody, the physicians, but of course the staff and the patients, visitors. Basically, it brought a whole sense of calm to the hospital. And Peter, the director, he says that we're here to provide sonic care, and basically his goal is to reimagine. What he says is we want to reimagine clinical spaces. So obviously, when you think of clinical care, hospital care, you have a lot of feelings of fear, uncertainty, the bright lights, the lack of sometimes the lack of human connection, things like that.
Yeah.
He has a very, very long-term vision that he wants music itself to be implemented into policies and things like that. He wants the musicians to be considered essential staff at the hospital. So he's got a very 10, 15-year vision of what he wants to achieve. And we've been going since 2015. So it's 2022 now. Some of that time we've been pro bono, volunteer work. Sometimes it's been funded. We did crowdfunding as well at a time. And more recently we've received some grants. So I was helping Peter with administration and recruiting some musicians who were suitable, and I've helped behind the scenes a little bit. So, but it's been very life-changing. Yeah, some of the most profound performing, or you wouldn't even call it performing, just musical experiences have happened in that building at the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital. So,
yeah, man, I love that. I love that so much, and I really am excited to hear that there are people out there who are thinking more broadly about how music can be integrated into just places and organizations that we would never necessarily think of it as essential. But this idea of sonic care, and I can even imagine waiting rooms where the stress and usually they've just got a TV on, and it's kind of like everybody there is in pain, everybody there is suffering. How much benefit it would be just to have people there playing music. Just the calming effect of that would be incredible. And I can certainly see how the handpan would be such a perfect instrument for that. What have
Yes.
been some of the responses that you've seen from, I guess, patients and who have been in the hospital?
I'll give you one story that you'll enjoy. Well, first of all, most people are just very either two things. They're very curious or just very thankful. They're curious because I'm playing what looks like a spaceship.
Yeah.
Or a
You
Weber
must have kids
barbecue.
come up to you and be very curious about it as well, right?
Yes, yeah, kids. A lot of older people. Yeah, they bring on the Weber barbecue analogy,
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yep.
which in itself I think is here's something for you. I think it's even that act of them reaching out and saying something. That's an act of connection as well. You know,
Yeah.
and they're same thing. The pattern interrupt. They've had that thought and they find it so interesting enough that they reach out and actually uh, engage in, even if it's a brief conversation.
Yeah.
When if there was no music there, they would have no conversation with anybody, which is a powerful thing. That's mostly, yeah, people walk by. Sometimes they stop for 15 minutes where they have a listen. They say thank you. But the most powerful story was in the waiting area. I came and sat down and I was very, what's the word? There was just a bit of resistance for me that day. Emotionally, I was finding it tough to walk into the space and play, which I found that sometimes because I'm very sensitive to spaces like this and the heavy feelings and the pain and all that. But anyway, I persevered, as I always do, and sat down and played. And this lady just came and sat down right in front of me, about 2 meters away from me. And she closed her eyes, and I could see that her eyes were closed for about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. So I actually adjusted what I was playing on the instrument, and I slowed the tempo down, played something more repetitive and calming, and after a little while, I stopped, and she said thank you, and we had a conversation, and she just so thankful. She said, "Oh, thank you. You know, I have this incurable blood cancer that I've been receiving treatment for 4 years," and she said, "Oh, every waking moment I'm in pain, but when I heard your music just now, I didn't feel any pain in my body."
Mm.
And it's every time I tell a story at a concert, you can hear a pin drop. Everyone's just so silent, taking the story, and so there's obviously something powerful about that experience. We actually stayed in touch after that, and she I sent her some CDs, and we connected online, and she's sent more, thank yous, words of encouragement, and words of support since then. So, yeah, I'm not sure how you can, in terms of powerful and rewarding musical experiences, I'm not sure what tops that really.
Yeah.
Certainly,
Yeah,
4 years at the
essential
conservatorium doesn't come
stuff.
close to that.
Yeah. But seriously, man, that's the power of great art, I would say, is that for a brief moment it takes you away from this kind of experience of the pain and the everyday experience of life's challenges, and for a brief
Yes.
moment. But certainly, I mean, if you're having these people who are every day in physical pain, mental pain, and they have just a brief moment, and I think like it has to be right there, live musician in front of you having that experience, so that there's two bodies there at least who are interacting, because
The transfer of energy, you could say.
the transfer of energy. But yeah, I'm so excited to continue to follow how that plays out, because it would be such a beautiful thing if the it'd be so cool to see the music industry and the care industry, the medical industry pairing up in certain ways. Of course, musical therapy is becoming more and more of a popular option, but yeah, it just seems like there's so many opportunities there. Would you maybe go in a little bit into your own health issues? I'm not even sure if I understand where that started.
Sure. Q's anxious cough. Joking. Yeah, I'm not a music therapist, and just to put an endpoint on the last topic, we are not trained music therapists. We have received some criticism. We are professional musicians that play music that has a therapeutic effect. We're not trained music therapists.
Okay.
No, you go for it.
No, well, I have to comment on that as well, because it irks me so much that.
Are you disappointed that we've received criticism from music therapists?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
But I have a reason. Okay. What makes you a philosopher? Is it having a degree in philosophy, or is it being somebody who loves wisdom? To me, I say it's if you're somebody who is engaging in the process of seeking deeper wisdom and you truly love wisdom, that's what you want. That's what makes you a philosopher, right? I try to transcend the boundaries of university degrees in many things. Now listen, if you're a doctor, please go to university, learn your craft, right? but even
yes, we want our neurosurgeons to be trained.
Yes, but I will say that even in my own philosophical mentoring practice, I mean, I've had people who have said to me, I've been to multiple psychologists or counselors, and I didn't see the results that I saw just with 3 or 4 conversations with you, right? And I'm not saying that works for everybody. And I'm not even saying that I'm not, like, I look for opportunities to further educate myself to be better. But nonetheless, I think that what's happening, at least with my own clients, is I'm not coming at it from the standpoint of like, I'm an expert here to tell you how to do things, right? I'm coming at, like, I'm a human being. I go through challenges. You're a human being. You go through challenges. Yes. Let's mix those conversations together. Let's engage in a dialogue and see if we can both come to some deeper wisdom for our life. And I think if you are going into hospitals and building relationships with people and bringing them into a deeper sense of calm, enabling them to overcome their pain and their suffering for a brief moment, it's like, you're doing music therapy. Okay. Like, what's the downside here? And so to me, when I hear you say, like, we've received some criticism from music therapists, it's like, what the hell? Like, what's with that? What's with this human need to always just be like criticizing? It's human.
It's the categorization, isn't it? It's the ego. It's the boxes.
Yes.
You got to stay in your lane. We apparently, as a team, were not staying in our lane, and we were starting to impede on the progression of music therapists nationwide.
Man.
Sorry, I laugh as I say that. I am exaggerating. That none of that was said, but I'm just the trajectory of perhaps what certain people are thinking.
Yeah.
I tend to do that. I tend to look at the trajectory of certain thoughts and belief patterns. But they could be thinking that. They could be thinking, oh, our industry's in jeopardy here. We have people who are not qualified doing a job very similar to us, but our job is quite different, in fact. And Peter, the director, does a very good job of announcing that and making sure it's known that we are musicians first and foremost.
Yeah.
So, but we have the support of the hospital, and we're not stopping any music therapists from doing their important work, which is very important. And I may go into that field in time. I have a passion for research, so I've been looking at perhaps doing some research into this, the effects of the handpan, for instance, in hospital care, and different topics like that. But that's all I'll say about that.
So I interrupted you with my rant. So yeah, go ahead.
I could sense it. I could sense it was coming.
Oh, I was ready.
I think it's worth addressing. Yeah, I like a good rant. It's the nervous system fires up sometimes. You got to address that need.
I'm trying to build my skill as a ranter. I think that it could be a full-time profession.
Professional ranter.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as it doesn't impede on the psychologists and the counsellors and their pathways.
Okay. Go back. Okay. Yeah. Please share the origin, I guess, of when you started to see your own health issues, because I've had a very limited view of what you've gone through, but from what I do know, it's been it's redirected your life in almost every way. So where did that start?
Yes, it has. Very debilitating. Started in 2018, roughly, and it was just a general feeling of it was nothing complex to begin with. Just didn't feel well, and it was a sensitivity to a lot of things that brought it on. Of course, lots of people have digestion issues and food sensitivities and all that sort of thing. But basically, started as very, very minor, but I was reacting to a lot of things, be it, food, caffeine, most of the food I was eating actually, but that also translated to, not only digestion, but it started to affect, stress and things like that. If I had a stressful circumstance, then I would react, way worse than before. So my body was just becoming very sensitive, essentially. And I thought it was normal to begin with to feel terrible most of the time. I thought everyone, had these kind of crashes, these energy crashes. So obviously coming from where I came from with, the music and the perfectionism and the high achieving states, it just knocked me down a little bit, and I just wanted some answers. That's all it was. I just wanted to work it out, what was wrong. Maybe there's a little deficiency. Maybe there's just something I need to tweak, and I'll be fine. And spoke to just mainstream doctors, and they did a lot of tests, blood tests and things, just to make sure nothing was wrong, and nothing appeared to be wrong for a good year. And they said, don't make any changes, keep doing what you're doing. But basically, just it got worse and worse, the sensitivities, and that led to things like anxiety and dark moods and mood swings, blah blah blah, and basically just led to more tests where, once I found the right doctor and the right care, they realised that there was a lot going on with the main issues. Mainly, it's been what we call malabsorption, which is where the body doesn't integrate what you're putting in. It doesn't process the nutrients and all the things that you're putting into the system. So basically, my body was rejecting a lot of what was coming in. Which led to see all kinds of specialists, gastroenterologists, dietitians. I did, endoscopies and different more invasive scans and tests, and a lot of it came back normal, nothing to worry about, So it just became a bit of a spiral where I wasn't sure what the problem was, and all the while I was losing a lot of weight as well, unexpectedly, and I was quite thin to begin with, as you know. I'd never been a big person, so to lose all that, I lost about 20 kilos, got down to 59 kilos at my worst.
Oof.
And basically a feeling of, whatever I ate was just immediately rejected, basically. So it's a form of malabsorption. And I saw naturopaths. I went down the more alternative path in 2019. And that made things worse, because I was given a lot of supplements and kind of stimulating things to try and heal the body, but basically the body wasn't ready to heal. So it led to more, rejection. And just created this spiral. It affected things socially, social anxiety. Friends wouldn't understand. It affected my motivation to, practice with my career and get better. It even led to me seeing a specialist in America at the start of last year, Dr. Michael Lamb. And basically they diagnosed me with adrenal fatigue, which a lot of mainstream doctors don't accept. But it's just, your body's out of balance, your stress hormones and adrenaline, and that affects your digestion. And that was one of the many things I've been diagnosed with. I could write a book with what doctors have told me I have, and especially the misdiagnoses, I have a list somewhere. It's hyperglycemia, fibromyalgia, pyrrole disorder, fat malabsorption. They suspected, perhaps Crohn's disease, which is a bowel, because I had a lot of bowel problems. IBS, just endless. Endless. There's been more since then. Now I got the right doctors, in my team. Thankfully, the specialist in America, he helped me a lot to stabilize me, and it's hard to know what to believe after a while. You're in such a rabbit hole. But he basically said I was entering this state of panic, catabolic overwhelm, just crisis levels, he thought, where the body was rejecting everything. He said, you need to do less, you need to, whatever you're accustomed to doing, you're going to have to let that go, And I'm very thankful that a close past mentor, a teacher of mine, he said the same. He said, your body's doing too much, Forget the labels and the diagnosis, whatever. Your body's simply doing too much, and you need to accept that you got to do less. You got to step back, So that's what led to a lot of changes, really, with leaving my long-term teaching position, and I'm just thankful I'm doing a lot better than I was now. I've got some really good doctors that are, still working with the digestion and the energy issues, and they're actually looking at the brain a bit more now, because I have some gene mutations.
Okay.
Some I don't know I'm still trying to work out how you explain it to people, but gene mutations that are affecting how things are converted in the body, and it all relates to how my body accepts the input. And but I've got a really good team around me, and alternative and mainstream. I'm thankful for everyone. So that's a brief summary. Yeah. And yes, that is brief.
And have they narrowed it down to this is what it is, or is it still very much something that is unseen, I guess, before?
Well, no, some things they've narrowed down. Some things can be measured, Amongst all this, I was diagnosed with osteoporosis, which is basically you have the bones of a 60-year-old.
Wow.
And your bones are breaking down quicker than they're repairing. Your bones are too brittle, essentially. I stepped on a tennis ball, and I ruptured a ligament and chipped a bone by stepping on I just stepped on a tennis ball and just kind of slipped, Yeah. That's when they realized that I had a bone disorder. And I'm currently, going through kind of non-invasive treatment for that. I have to be very careful because I've been led down some very, very bad paths. And one doctor in particular wanted me on a bone drug, which numerous doctors tell me now that, including a bone specialist, tell me now that would have led to my bones being more brittle, and would have led to jaw fractures, and it would have probably shortened my life, basically.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be given to anyone under the age of 70, and I'm 27. So
Okay.
I'm thankful that I'm very curious. I've had friends and more, close friends, intimate relationships where people do criticize me for being quite analytical and serious and reading into things too much. But I disagree, and I'm very glad that I had the curious mind to seek other opinions, and to just trust the gut, the intuition, trust the spirit.
But how many
I'm still here, so.
How many doctors or specialists do you reckon you've seen now?
At least 12, at least a dozen, I would say, across a 3-year period. Probably more, probably closer to 20. I've seen at least 5-6 GPs, and then the specialists. There's been numerous specialists that I've seen, from the gastroenterologist, the endocrinologist, all the dietitians, blah blah blah. And some things have worked really well, but it's always hard to frame it into a practical, let's do this to move forward.
Yeah.
So
I remember speaking to you a couple of years ago, I think it was, and the sense that I got was, I think that you were still in a period where there was no sure diagnosis. And so what was happening was basically you were just suffering terribly without any sort of end in sight. And, that was when I really understood the truth of something that Jordan Peterson says, where he mentions that, like, the last thing that you want when you go to a doctor is for them to tell you that there's nothing wrong, because it's like, well,
it's true.
Like, clearly something's happening here. You want them to tell you, this is what it is, here's the box that we can put it in, and here's what we can do. But you were just in this kind of state of limbo where you're just thinking, what the hell's going on with my body? And I guess what got you through that period and that pain?
I don't know. It was so difficult. Thankfully, I've always had great support systems around me, and I have a lot of hope that I'm able to work things out. So I trusted myself, basically, that I would get through it. That's ultimately what's keeping me going here. But I do have the support of my immediate family, my parents, and close friends and things. That's been helpful, and I guess the further I go into it, I find a team of doctors and people that care, and I put a lot of trust into them. Sometimes too much trust, but that's what keeps me going. I do put the trust into the people who know more than me, the experts. And I've always done that. I've always, whether it be music or anything, I put a lot of trust into people that I feel have expertise. So sometimes that's led me down the wrong path, but for the most part, it's been good. And I'm very comfortable with myself and my own thoughts and the darkness that lies within. my album release, my solo album, which you can listen to on Spotify, is called No Enemy Within, and that's what keeps me going. I try and keep that at bay, and it's a bit of a dance, I don't know if you saw the movie Joker, the recent movie with Joaquin, the actor.
I haven't seen that, but so many people have said that how brilliant it is.
Brilliant movie.
Yeah, even the one
really encapsulates the dance.
I haven't seen anything. So,
yes.
Yeah.
But it's all manageable at the moment. There's some days where it's overwhelming, and then there's ups and downs. But that's anyone. I'm not the only one. There's many people that have chronic, unresolved, or what we call imaginary illnesses.
Yeah.
Where people can't see what's going on. A lot of autoimmune problems are like that, and even issues like endometriosis, which women suffer immensely with,
Yeah.
where other people just can't see what's going on, and that does give me a lot of anxiety. But I just try and surround myself with good people, and if people don't understand what I'm going through, then I can't change that. So
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I just hope that you're able to find some sure path forward through this. It sounds like you've, like, just the fact that you say my team, you got like a team of people working to figure out what's going on and how you can get through it. But I think this is a good place to say thanks for coming on the show. This has been a really beautiful conversation, and I'm going to keep on talking to you afterwards. But I guess would you share with everybody who's listening where they can listen more to your music? Obviously, Spotify, No Enemy Within. Anywhere else you'd want them to head?
Sure. Well, my website, lachlanhawkins.com. That's the main hub. I'm very active on Instagram, where I post a lot of exclusive content there of my music. And yes, my album, No Enemy Within, you can listen on all major streaming sites, and also Bandcamp, which is a great website which supports independent artists. They can search my name, and yes, I hope they enjoy the music.
Yeah, man. Well, let this be the final thing on the record of this podcast. You're a brilliant human being, seriously. And I remain to this day extremely grateful that we developed a friendship throughout university, because to go through university with somebody like you, where we just really shared this love of growth and exploration and wanting to do well, and to have somebody like that as a friend to me in university was huge. And so I think that it's been really good kind of rekindling that friendship lately and having more conversations, because I think why the hell not? You're one of the closest friends that I've had in my life, seriously. And so, Lockie, thank you. You're a brilliant human being, and I'm really glad that we had this conversation.
Thanks, Simon. I appreciate you and everything you're doing with your work, but yourself as for who you are, and what you stand for, your values, and your own growth. You're doing an amazing job, mate.
Trying. As we all are.
As we all are. As we all are. Thank you, Simon.
You've been listening to the Walled Garden Podcast. If you'd like to attend any of our free meetups and events, or if you'd like to get one-on-one mentoring with either Sharon LaBelle, Kai Whiting, or myself, just go to thewalledgarden.com. But for now, don't forget to nourish those gardens in your mind.